Hi, everyone. Barry McGuire here for Barry McGuire's Creative Real Estate Education Group. All things creative. Today we're going to talk about something that is probably, I think I said in our video promo, the second most asked question that I get. The first one is, should I incorporate? And the second one is, who can I get involved in my joint venture without running afoul of the authorities? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we get started on that, though, I just want to put it out there that, you know what, we're coming up to 1 year, the 1 year anniversary of our group. I can't believe it's only been a year. My goodness, but it is. We started up the group last year after we did our big event with Corey and Tiffany. And we're coming up on 1 year, and Donna, my producer and better half, is planning a 1 day, inexpensive, but will still cost you a few shekels, event on creative real estate investing. It's to chat about the 4 or 5 or 6 creative strategies that we talk about: agreements for sale, rent to own, fix and flip, wholesaling, joint ventures, that whole thing, just to give folks, especially newer folks, a bit of a grounding in what those things are. It's going to be an all-day event sometime in July. I think Donna's planning. And so now I got to tell people about it. So that's my chit chat on that. But for today on joint ventures, first we're going to have a few words on exactly what is a joint venture and why would you be interested in one. And then we're going to talk about how you expand your joint venture universe. And after that, we're going to talk and interweave into that some comments on securities commissions. And then we're going to talk about some of the actual legal cases. And some of it's a bit technical and a bit dry, but if you can't do all these things on your own because of regulation, then it's stuff we have to talk about. So that's what we're going to do today. And joining me today will be Wayne Hillier and Neil Taniguchi, both of whom have done joint ventures, and I think both of whom have joint ventures still in the works. So Neil and Wayne are going to pop up here momentarily and help to discuss joint ventures and the various aspects of securities commission things and legalities. So to get started, the first question is, what is a joint venture? No, I think everybody has a pretty good idea of what a joint venture is, but just in case you don't, a joint venture is an arrangement in contract form, usually called a joint venture agreement or sometimes called a co-ownership agreement, whereby 2 or more entities get together to purchase and manage a piece of real estate. So I could do a joint venture with Neil, or I could do a joint venture with Wayne. Those are 2 entities, Barry and Wayne, or Barry and Neil. One of those entities could be my corporation or their corporation, or it could be 2 corporations. Sometimes people buy in one corporation and then they're shareholders in the corporation, and they would usually have a what's called a unanimous shareholders agreement, or USA as it's abbreviated, and that would have corporate things in it and also real estate joint venture things in it. So joint ventures are put together for people to cooperate in purchasing and managing a piece of real estate for fun and profit. So that's kind of what it is. I guess the next question is, why do you need a joint venture? And before I carry on with that, Wayne and Neil, you guys can pop up anytime you want. You can not be popped up if you don't want, but you can be live whenever it suits you.
How about now?
Now, wow, that was just to make sure you're still there. But they played nice at the beginning, and then they disappeared.
How's it going, Barry? Neil?
So once we know what a joint venture is, why do you need a joint venture? And I mean, it's probably an obvious answer. Wayne, why did you ever need a joint venture? Why don't you just do all the deals on your own?
Well, there's only so many resources you can get access to. Down payment resources, mortgage financing, right? You're gonna run out of your own money at some point, and you're also gonna run out of your own ability to get mortgages. So I can remember when I first started out, I'm like, I'm not partnering with anyone. I'm not. It's like, why would I partner with people? I just want to do it myself. And then you realize, everyone has this realization that you do need to partner with others. And as you grow, you start to realize that there's actually a lot more reasons to partner with people, and not just for yourself, but helping others. So,
sure, okay.
And I'll add to that, Barry, that Wayne's mentioned the two when you're the investor perspective who's already doing real estate investing. So you run out of money, down payment, and capital and mortgage financeability, like he was talking about. The other is if you don't have the time. So in our case, we have a bunch where we are the sweat for someone else being the equity, but we also have one where we are the equity, and it's on a multi up in Edmonton where you guys are with Chris Davies, because he knows way more about multifamily than I do. And so he's the expert. We're just in the background, sort of.
Yes. No. So that's three reasons why people would enter into joint ventures. And every time we talk about these things, it's amazing, how the offshoot comes out. So you talk about the equity side of it, and when you're the investor and you've used up all your hard-earned cash and or you can't qualify for any more mortgages, I know that lots of people go, who am I? I'm just a schmo that owns 3 houses and that's all good, and I could probably tell a pretty good story, but who's going to invest with me? And the short answer is lots of people will invest with you, because I think we've learned over the years that there are way more people who would rather stroke a check to somebody they trust, who they think will do well by them, than who want to get down in the trenches and learn how to do all the work. Mm-hmm. So that's just a sideline for people who think that they might have already run out of near to them joint venture partners. But lots of people are interested in doing joint ventures.
Don't give up.
Don't give up. Yeah, don't give up.
Quit hammering.
A good expression that was given to me a number of years ago that I still use to this day is that money is in abundance. There are so many people right now who are, and again, if you're working some of this stuff into your pitch, verbatim, word for word, if you're tired of the gut-wrenching roller coaster that the stock market represents these days, ... and go from there. It's a great lead-in, because the stock market's great when it's booming. It's not so great when it crashes. I love making posts, because inevitably there's that correction that shows up. So money is in abundance, and that mindset was something that was given to us a long time ago. There is so much money on the sidelines, and people don't know what to do with it. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, if you're a real estate investor today with not even your first door, but you've been hanging around this group and you understand this and you can leverage and ask the questions on it, you start to become that person in your circle of friends, where they say, hey, Wayne, so what's going on in Edmonton right now in the real estate market? What's happening? And you become kind of the person with the knowledge and the expert within your circle, right? Everyone has a financial person or maybe a car person type of thing, and you're the real estate person in your circle. All of a sudden the people go, well, that 10,000 hours to become a master at something, do they really want to put those hours in? A lot of people just want to have a return on their investment, which in some cases they were just wishing they had a return of their investment if they put it in the wrong vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And every second day there's another report on how much pent-up demand there is for everything. The number of dollars that are sitting inactive in bank accounts because of COVID is absolutely astronomical. It is billions and billions and billions of dollars that even by inadequate government measurement, they know people have just been accumulating their money with nothing to spend it on. And so there's always lots of money. And that's one of the upsides of COVID is there's even more money right now. So that's good.
Did you guys watch The Missing Millions with Rain? I think it was yesterday.
I didn't see that. Was it good?
It was very good, actually. They were talking about interest rates, and to go back to what Neil said about abundance, the amount of wealth that's been created just in real estate, just owning a home in the last 5-10 years, because our interest rates have been so low, and so much of your payment, your mortgage payment, whether it be on a rental property or your home, is going towards principal now. A lot of equity is being created, and obviously in a lot of markets, values are going up as well. Yeah. So people have a lot more access to equity to invest as well, more than ever.
I didn't think of that, but that's true. Every time I get those statements from my bank showing how much my principal has reduced in a year, I keep saying, wow, wow. Like it's some new phenomenon that I've never seen before. But it's, after years of higher interest rates where you didn't pay down that much, it's still great to see. So yeah, between the value of assets increasing in many jurisdictions and the equity pay down, that's another spot. That's apart from all that cash that's sloshing around in bank accounts looking to do something. So
yeah.
All right. So then let's just, not to beat this up too much, but for each of you, Neil, let's start with you. When you went looking for joint venture partners, or maybe they came looking for you, how did they fit into your circle of acquaintances? Are they friends, relatives, workers? Where did you find your joint venture partners?
Our very, very first one that we did, Barry, was with a friend of Linda's. She and her husband, they were really, we hadn't talked to, they weren't close friends, but they were friends type of thing. So the catch up with you twice a year type of friends. And he had that mindset of, if you talk in the, what do they call it? The seminar world, he was a seminar junkie, as they call it. So that he would go and he'd book the 3-day course for $2,500, do that one, and then see another one for something else, day trading, Forex, real estate investing. At that particular time, I'm guessing he had just taken a real estate type thing and he wanted to figure out how to get rich quick. So they came to us and they said, hey, you guys invest in real estate, right? And we said, yeah. And they said, can we learn and teach from you? Or are you willing to share with us and teach us a little bit? And we said, absolutely. In fact, here's something that might work for you, that we have an opportunity right now. And I'm going to sidebar that one, by the way, that says, I'm looking for a joint venture partner, folks, versus I have an opportunity for a joint venture agreement right now with someone. Mm-hmm. If you listen to those two phrases, they're both saying the same thing, but I'm looking for sounds very, very desperate and needy, possibly. Whereas I have an opportunity, it's just how it gets presented. Again, something else that was shared with me years ago that stuck with me. Anyways, back to that, we said, come in with us on this joint venture because you can qualify for a mortgage. We ended up doing 2 properties with it, and they said, we will teach you everything you want to know. We'll ask us all the questions you want about landlording and real estate investing, and let's go from there. And guess how many questions they ever asked in 13 years about landlording and real estate investing since that joint venture was established?
Nada.
0.
Right? I got a couple partners just like that.
Yeah. So that's fine, right? Because again, in the mindset and the personality for those folks, we started out with in one case it was in the days when you get a straight HELOC finance on a property, and we agreed that neither of us needed the cash flow from that one property at the time. So we threw it all at the mortgage, and 13 years later, that HELOC is down to $54,000.
Wow.
So they're happy with that, because at one point in time, we did get the email or the call that said, I don't really know if this was such a good thing. What's happening? What's going on? And we sent them an update from our original pro forma saying, here's where we are now. And that was the end of that. They were super happy with that now.
Yes. Wow. So that was a friend. That was a kind of a friend of Linda. Yeah. And you talked about the opportunity instead of needing or looking for. That's a very important thing to say. Folks, as Neil talks about the way you put things to people, the way you say things, the way you introduce things. I hope you're writing them down, because I don't know if you've ever listened to Neil before, but he's a really easy guy to listen to. I think it's probably easy to fall under his because that's the kind of a guy he is. He knows how to say stuff. He knows how to present it, and it resonates with to whom he is speaking. So when Neil tells you how to say it, write it down and say it just like that. What about you, Wayne? You've got a few joint venture partners. That was a friend for Neil, friend of Linda's. What about you?
Man, I was the exact opposite. I talked way too fast and I butchered them all. Like the first couple, I have no idea how I came out of those with partners, but I did. and same kind of thing. Friends, I reached out to friends first, and in the beginning, you just kind of have to just go and try different stuff. You got to try different approaches. Neil's got an amazing approach, and he's right about just, flipping the way that you say it can really change how you're being perceived. Yeah. We talk a lot about trust in, the different, focus workshops. Trust is everything, right? They're not listening to the numbers. They're listening to, to you. They want to invest with you. So thankfully, I'd built some really amazing trust with these friends that they looked past the horrible presentations that I put together, and the stuttering because I was so nervous. But yeah, it's the first couple were friends, and then now I'm at a point where it's a lot easier because you can leverage your past experiences, you can leverage your brand. I guess from people like you said, recognizing who you are, you're that guy, and when someone's got a question about tenants and someone's got a question about renovations, you're always that guy. And it took a while to kind of build that up, but now I'm just able to leverage that. And when I go and ask people, it's much easier. I don't get as nervous anymore. And a lot of people come to me. So
yeah, that observation of yours about the first couple of things being so difficult and horrible presentations, and you butchered them and you're nervous. I mean, I think that's common for everybody, but how many times have we heard the story just like that from folks who have taken our courses, that they stumble through the first one or two and people say, sure, let's go for it. So it's really a matter of if you build trust and if you step out there, people will say yes when you think you will have driven them from the country, let alone have them invest in a joint venture with you. So that's just getting over it,
I would say, Barry, that's exactly right, because quite frankly, anyone who is part of this Facebook group likely has a desire to move forward in the real estate investing career. And what Wayne says is exactly where we were. I can remember putting together a fairly comprehensive type, almost darn near PowerPoint presentation. And I asked one of our neighbors at the time if I could just do a dry run on them. Anyone who's ever had known someone who does Cutco knives, that's actually their sales strategy. Hey, do you mind if I just try this out on you? And I need to practice and get used to it. So we did that. We've literally never done a deal with those folks, but I certainly had my when I was doing that. And now it almost becomes to the point where everyone starts at that point, and as you get a little more experience and air under your wings, this creative group, right, the course that's being offered for the anniversary is going to be an example, a time when you can come and you have an understanding that these strategies are out there, but to hone those skills and build them and help you as an investor move forward in your real estate investing is really what this is all about, right? So you get that air under your wings a little bit. And now when you get to the point where you're, again, that's been going around lately, a lot of folks would rather bet on the jockey than on the horse. So as you get some known as a jockey, so to speak, who has the ability to get things done, that's when you almost every now and then we'll put something out there, but we're always going to offer it out to we call them our repeat offenders, but they're the people who've gotten us here, right? The people who have supported us for years always get first crack at our next opportunity because we're loyal to them just because they took a chance on us a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing more absolutely satisfying than hearing from an investor going, hey, I got a check that no, we don't want our money back, right? We want you to keep making us some money. Please don't pay us out. Find us another opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing that people have to understand is that once you've done a deal, I mean, maybe somebody's a little iffy about starting out with you, even though they sign up. But once you've done a deal and done what you said you're going to do and solve problems, if problems showed up, when you come back and say, all right, well, I've got another opportunity. It's the easiest thing in the world for them. Might be hard for them, but it's half as hard the next time. And by the third deal, they literally, as Neil said, don't ask any questions. They might not have asked any on the first one. When you're doing the third deal, they just go, how much do you need?
Yeah.
That's all they do.
Yeah.
It gets absolutely easy peasy once you've done one with somebody to do another one with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of takes us into our next step, which, we could probably stop here because I think what we've said is there's no end of joint venture partners in your circle of friends and family and business associates. There's just no end to it. So if there's no end to it, nobody needs to hear about securities commissions and other ways you can, be a bit more formal about it and how you can get your tail in a ringer if you're not. So I don't know.
Is there more?
Is there more? Yay, there's more.
There's always more.
There's always more. So let's now we're into the scenario. Well, okay, so you have run out of your pals and your close associates and your friends and your relatives, and you've run out of people that you know, and that's just happened, and so you have to strike out, and so so what can you do? Well, if you fire up a website, if you plaster the town with flyers, if you stuff mailboxes saying, call me for a trouble-free investment in real estate. Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. You have no responsibilities except, put up a little bit of money, and I guarantee that you will make this kind of return on your invested dollar.
You forgot to say risk-free, Barry.
Risk-free, yes. Risk-free as well, on top of all of those other things. If that's what you put out publicly, then the various securities commissions in various provinces will be all over you. They will be all over you. Mm-hmm. So before we get too far into this discussion, number one, I am not a securities lawyer, not a securities. I'm a real estate lawyer. Securities is a whole other subspecialty of the law and quite complicated. Number two, although you might think so, and it would make all the sense in the world, and they've been trying to do it for years, there is no national one-stop securities regulator in Canada. There isn't. Each of the provinces and territories has their own regulator. Some of them, literally copy what the next province has done. Ontario and BC, but especially Ontario, are leaders in securities regulation. So if you look at things from Manitoba or Alberta, you might find, hey, this looks just like Ontario, because Ontario leads the pack. But securities issues are provincially regulated. So when we're talking here today, I'm talking about how things are in Alberta from the Alberta Securities Commission's point of view. If you're in a different province, you have to figure out how it works in your province. But it's you're going to find that there are real solid similarities between the provinces and how they look at things. So individual differences, but certainly a lot of general agreement between provinces on how they regulate in their province. So having said that, if you want to be onside your Securities Commission, in this case we're talking about Alberta, the primary vehicle that you would use is something called a prospectus. Prospectus is a long document, pages and pages and pages, thousands and thousands of words that describe what it is that you want people to give you money for, what you want them to invest in. There are lots and lots and lots of regulated steps that you have to go through in order to put that prospectus in shape to introduce it to the public. And all of those things that you have to do are regulated by securities commissions. You really can't, it's impossible to do that on your own. You have to hire a securities lawyer and maybe a securities accountant and maybe 2 or 3 of each, depending. And that's, it's difficult enough and complicated enough and lengthy enough that that's how you have to put it together. So if you're going to sell to the public by way of prospectus, you're going to spend, I would venture to say, upwards of $100,000 and probably more to put that kind of thing together. And it takes a bunch of time as well. So for folks like us who are investing in a property or 2 at a time, or you're wanting someone to invest with you in a property or 2, going the prospectus route is just not on. I've never heard of any kind of retail investor saying, okay, I'm going to crank up a prospectus and that's how I'm going to attract money. So that doesn't seem to go. Luckily, though, there are exemptions to the prospectus requirement. Those are called, aptly enough, prospectus exemptions. It's the only thing that makes sense about securities law. No, there's lots of it that makes sense.
There's
so
a lawyer in there somewhere, Barry.
I'll tell you, it's a prospectus. Prospectuses are a lawyer's dream. I mean, ideally, somebody shows up who's looking to take his successful private company. They're mostly not about real estate. They could be. They're looking to take their private company public because they've been successful, and they need people to underwrite the stock. They need bankers. They need lawyers. They need accountants. They need lots of advertising. It's a professional's dream to be involved in that end of it with a well-heeled private investor who's going to take his company public at $100 a share. So, but let's talk about, if you don't want to go the full-blown prospectus route, what are those prospectus exemptions? And I've got a list of them here. So I was looking at the Alberta Securities Commission website, and I found a section called Common Capital Raising Prospectus Exemptions. And there are 12 of them. Thank you, Donna. Donna's counted. There are 12 exemptions. So you think you got to be able to fit in there somewhere. 12 exemptions, and of those 12, 5 of them are probably the ones that would be used most often. And so let's talk about what those 5 are. So Donna, are you going to give people links to some of these Alberta Securities Commission portions? So Donna will send out some links so you can see what the Alberta Securities Commission says. And I would venture to say that if you look at your Securities Commission website in Ontario or Nova Scotia or British Columbia, you will find similar material where there are frequently asked questions, because everybody wants to know, what do I have to do to attract public money? And so those questions will be asked in every province. So the 5 that we're just going to have a very quick look at are private issuer exemption, accredited investor, family, close personal friends, and close business associates, offering memorandum exemption, and a startup crowdfunding regime. So those are the 5 that the Securities Commission here in Alberta thinks are the most commonly used. And so we're going to chat about them. So I think I'm going to go, instead of private issuer, I'm going to talk about the family, close personal friends, and close business associates exemption. Because doesn't that sound like what we're doing right now? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So let's just think about this. So in our joint venture world that we all operate in right now, we are treading on an exemption that exists under the Securities Act. They understand that people will talk to their friends and relatives and business associates. So let's see what that one says on what the deal is. All right, so the friends, family, and business associates exemption permits the sale to principals of the issuer. That's your directors, executive officers, founders, if you happen to be operating through a corporation. But you can also issue securities to people who have one of the following relationships: a specified family member, a close personal friend, a close business associate. Specified family members are spouses, parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters, children, grandchildren. So a pretty wide definition. There are a pretty wide scope of people who have been involved, but there is no definition of a close personal friend or close business associate. So we have some guidelines there. A close personal friend means an individual who knows the principal. So you guys would be principals when you're looking for joint venture partners. A close personal friend means an individual who knows the principal well enough and has known them for long enough to be able to assess their capabilities and trustworthiness and to obtain information from them on the investment. And a close business associate is someone who has sufficient prior business dealings with a principal to be able to assess the principal's capabilities and trustworthiness. So then they go into a little more detail. It's not enough to simply belong to the same religious organization, team, or other group. It's not enough to just be a client or a customer. It's not enough to just have a social media connection. There has to be a relationship of trust, and both parties should believe that such a relationship exists. In other words, you can't go, that guy trusts me. And the guy is saying, I wouldn't talk to Neil Taniguchi if he was the last BMW salesman on earth, for God's sake. So, you have to be really trusting each other. You can't pay commissioners or finders fees, so you can't collect money for doing that. If you pay that, then there's concern about whether the exemption was appropriately relied on. And okay, so here's the kicker, and this goes back to what we're all doing right now is probably subject to Securities Act regulation. An issuer who relies on this exemption, the close personal friends exemption, business associates, must file a Form 45-106F1 report of exempt distribution with the Alberta Securities Commission within 10 days of something. Securities acquired under this exemption are subject to restrictions on resale. So if somebody was involved in a joint venture with you here, they might not be able to sell their interest to somebody else. Not that that happens very much. So isn't that interesting? What we're doing already is already regulated by the Securities Commission, and there's a form that you're supposed to file. So, Barry, in all your joint ventures, have you ever filed that form that you just talked about? Answer from Barry: no, I've never done that. Wayne, I'm sure you look like a form filer to me.
Excuse me.
I'm just saying.
No filled forms.
Neil, save us here. Be the only legal guy in the group.
Filed it. Bin 13.
Okay. All right. And so then why do we have no difficulty with the Securities Commission? And it's not that we couldn't. I mean, why don't we have any trouble? Wayne, going to go back to you. Do you have any joint venture partners where the JV has gone bad, and what they've ended up saying is, Wayne, you are an SOB of the finest order. I wouldn't deal with you ever again, and I'm going to tell everybody I meet that Wayne Hillier is not a good guy to get into business with. Has that ever happened to you or come close to you in your joint ventures?
No. Not to that extent.
No.
Not every relationship always goes well, but no, not to that extent.
Not that. No. And Neil, how about you?
The only one we had was with, I'm doing it wrong again, was where? This way? That way. Wayne, and we settled out of court. I'm kidding, of course. No, we've been fortunate that I think, again, it's that old expression, you don't have a problem until you have a problem. And then again, and the other, quite frankly, is that I think if I go through my Rolodex of joint ventures, the majority, if not all of them, I think all of them, darn near Barry, qualify under that close friends and acquaintances and business type relationship. We haven't really ventured out of that immediate first level to that second level to even a third level. Perhaps there might be some, if we were talking about on the private lending side, but to me, lending is not joint venture.
No, that's a different scenario. That's a different scenario. So even though the friends and close business associates, close friends and close business associates exemption is regulated, I mean, it looks like it's just filing a form. And, I guess somebody could turn us in to the Securities Commission and say, hey, these guys didn't do their, but that really never happens. I've been around joint ventures for 40 plus years, and I've never heard of anybody who was dealing with close friends or close business associates ever have any issue with the Securities Commission. Not that you couldn't, it just doesn't happen. As Neil says, you don't have a problem until you got a problem. And so far, problems haven't shown up. So let's go on to another one.
Check the comment.
Sounds like Lori is filed.
Lori, get in the show.
Oh, Lori.
She's filed it.
So Lori, oh, wow, good for you. Straightforward, but lengthy. Yes. So
do you want to get her in?
That, Lori, do you want to come on and talk about it? Or is it just a matter of it's a form that you filed? Why don't you come on and chat? If
it's complicated to get her on, but if Donna can send her the link, we can definitely get her on.
Okay, well, I'll get Donna working on that, and while she's working on that, we'll carry on and just stop and come back to.
I sent it to her.
It's a private lending deal.
Tell her I sent it to her.
Yep, she's looks like she's got her. Yeah.
Lori May's got the link and is going to show up even as we speak
like
here.
Private lending deal.
Private lending. So somebody borrowed $100,000 from you, or you borrowed from somebody. Is that how it worked?
Well, she's coming on. So
she's coming on. So we're going to wait. All right.
Yeah.
We're waiting for Lori to see her face and have some actual words from her. Private issuer exemption. Where is my private issuer? Look for that. Crowdfunding. Looks like I have private issuer. There it is. Private issuer. Sorry, Donna. Of course I have private issuer. I asked you to get it for me and you got it. Why would I even doubt her? I mean, private issuer exemption is the exemption most small businesses use first when they're just incorporating or organizing and getting their initial seed investment. They may have relied on this exemption even without knowing they were subject to securities law. Yeah, I guess that probably happens a lot. Okay, so two main requirements. So the issuer must be a private issuer and the investor must be one of the persons or companies on a specified list of investors. So you can't already be a reporting issuer. If you want to be a private issuer for an exemption, you can't already be subject to Securities Act regulation, or you can't be an actual investment fund, which is likely subject to Securities Act regulations. You have to have less than 50 security holders. General terms, who do those people involve that you might deal with? And it sounds like similar to our close friends and business associates, directors, officers, employees, directors of an affiliate of the business. Then there's all the spouses and relatives, parents, grandparents, close personal friend of the directors, executive officers, close business associate of directors or officers. Sounds like a repetition to me. Spouse, parent, and other relative of the selling security holder. So you can widen out that category: an existing security holder of the issuer, an accredited investor, and we're going to talk about accredited investors, a person or company of which a majority of the voting securities are beneficially owned by any of those people above, a trust or estate of which all the beneficiaries or majority are persons described above, a person or company that is not the public. So to my reading, that is an expanded version of simply the close personal friend or business associate side of things. So it captures more people.
We got Lori.
We got Lori.
Hey,
Hi,
Lauren.
Lori. So tell us. So here we are saying nobody in the whole world has filed one of those forms under that section, and guess what?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I opened a mortgage investment corporation, a MIC. So I'm operating under an offering memorandum exemption as a private issuer. And yes, I did have all that securities lawyers. Yes, it was expensive to set up. And yes, I have to file that form after every closing within 10 days. A whole bunch of information goes up to the National Registry, which is called CDAR, SEDAR.
Okay. All right. All right. So that's what you had to go through when you did the offering memorandum, exemption, which is number 4 on our list of commonly used exemptions. And that's quite a bit more sophisticated, as you say. It might not be a prospectus, but it is an offering memorandum. And so, do you think you could have done that one on your own, Lori May, or was it really beyond most normal folks, and you need a securities lawyer and or a securities accountant?
I definitely needed advice from a securities accountant in order to set up the structure and figure out the most tax beneficial way to do it. I needed advice from a securities lawyer and continue to get advice from a securities lawyer. I have a quarterback lawyer and I've got another lawyer to do mortgages and stuff. So it's a lot of legal bills.
Yes, a lot of legal bills, but I'm hoping that if you're able, if you have the money to lend and you have the folks to borrow it, that you're making this work for you.
I'm doing it more from an opportunity point of view. So I've got a land development opportunity that I was raising funds for, and we wanted to do a syndicated mortgage. Syndicated mortgage didn't work out. Too many files. Lawyers didn't want to deal with that. So we created a MIC and funneled everything through that instead.
Okay. All right, folks. So what Lori May has done is that's quite a few steps beyond the first thing we talked about, which is working with close personal friends or close business associates. I think the thing of it is you can't really participate in any of these Securities Commission exemptions without telling them you're doing it and without some sort of form filing. In Lori May's case, I'm guessing she's got to do a lot more with them than if I was going to do a joint venture with Wayne, and if I wanted to really follow the Securities Act rules, fill out that one form 10 days after. Lori May's situation is quite a bit more sophisticated than that, but it just goes to show you that even though it's an exemption to the full-blown prospectus, it's still, when you're doing an offering memorandum exemption, is complicated and expensive, and but it's there if that's what you want to do.
If you're sticking with friends, families, and business associates, it's not going to be quite as expensive. When you expand to add accredited investors, you're kind of okay in the expensive category. But as soon as you reach out beyond accredited investors and beyond friends, family, and business associates, then you're getting into costly.
Yeah. As soon as you want to do that, then they really make you provide a lot of information and meet all the rules, and there are lots of them. So
many I's to dot.
Yeah, too many I's to dot. Well, Lori May, thanks for coming on and doing that for us. So we'll let Lori May go, and I'll carry on with our next one, which is, well, we talked about the offering memorandum. That was the next one I was going to talk about. Lori May also mentioned the accredited investor exemption. And this is, briefly, an accredited investor is somebody who has a lot of money and a lot of net worth. If somebody's net income before taxes is $200,000 in each of the 2 previous years, or if between them and their spouse, it's $300,000 in each of the 2 previous years, and that individual or individuals expect to continue to generate that kind of personal income, and as well, the aggregate realizable value of financial assets, cash, securities, deposits, contracts of insurance that they hold or with a spouse exceeds $1 million before taxes, but net of any related liabilities. So if these folks, to make it something we can all understand, if they had a real estate portfolio that was worth $5 million, if they sold it all and paid off all the mortgages, would they have $1 million left over? So they got to be earning $200,000 to $300,000, depending on whether it's a single person or a spouse. They got to have $100,000 net value. And so, briefly put, the accredited investor exemption are folks who have money, and the thinking of the Securities Commission is people don't usually accumulate that amount of money on an annual income basis and on a net realizable basis unless they are sophisticated and understand what's going on, and the Securities Commission isn't as concerned about protecting them. But there's a form. They have to sign the Form of Risk Acknowledgement 45-106F9 aimed at individual accredited investors. There's always a form. Moving on to, I want to look at crowdfunding. So crowdfunding is a relatively, new concept using the internet really to put forth an idea or some reason why folks out there should give you money. It's called crowdfunding. So as the Securities Commission says, another option, if you want to raise money from the general public that might be less expensive than the prospectus or the offering memorandum, is the startup crowdfunding regime. The documents required to get it going are less extensive than the offering memorandum. And significantly, they're not required to contain any financial statements. So that makes it immediately less onerous. And using the startup crowdfunding regime does not trigger a requirement under securities law to continue to file annual audited financial statements. So not available to reporting issuers or investment funds. If you're already dealing with the public, you can't load on that.
So you're saying is an investor can just go start a GoFundMe page for a property?
Well, that's what it's saying so far, and I'm just reading along here. What's that, Donna? Donna says she doesn't think so.
Yeah, it doesn't.
So these exemptions are provided by the Securities Commission under a certain blanket order, the startup crowdfunding registration and prospectus exemption. It's not the only exemption for crowdfunding, but it's especially designed for early stage businesses that have crowdfunding in mind. All right, the key conditions. The securities must be distributed through an online funding portal that is either registered as a dealer or that is relying on the dealer registration exemption provided in the local blanket order. So you've got to fit within the securities rules on being a dealer to use this exemption. You've got to give issuers, investors an offering document that complies with a particular form. That includes information about the business, management, the offering, how you intend to use the money raised, and the minimum amount that you will accept. You can only sell simple securities, common shares, non-convertible preferred shares, securities that can be converted into non-convertible debt, and limited partnership units. So I don't even know if real estate would fit in there. But there is a crowdfunding alternative.
I'm certain there must be rules on, those platforms as to what you're allowed to raise funds for. Yes, I'm sure that there are, because there are rules for all of these things as soon as the Securities Commission is involved. However, they talk about it being a little bit easier. Like I said, I'm not a securities lawyer. I'm just kind of bringing people the possibilities here. So Donna will be giving you links to some of the Alberta Securities Act pages and publications. And you already did that, Donna? Oh, very good. Donna's already done that. I'm curious to see if anyone else has done any research into this or plans to. Because, if you have, definitely put it in the comments below. And if not, and you do, do a post in the group and talk about it. It sounds too good to be true, but let's not be ignorant. Let's look into it.
It's always going to be tough when you've got to
There's some questions.
work through the Securities Commission.
Mhm.
Now we've got some questions. I've got a whole memo that I got my student to do. Is it ever good having a student? So I'm at my firm, Field Law. We have 4 student lawyers. They're articling. They've got their law degree. They're doing their year of apprenticeship or articles. And I can just call them up and go, I need something for my Monday event on joint ventures and how that fits with Securities Act stuff.
Yeah.
And I've got a 5-page memo here on how that works, which we're probably going to have to save until the next time. But let me just tell you how, before we get on to some of the questions, because I do want to answer some of those before 6 o'clock shows up. When you're dealing with the Securities Commission, I just want people to understand how detailed they get. So Section 1 of the Securities Act is the definitions section. And usually when you're doing definitions, it's Section 1. So 1 subsection A is a definition. Subsection B is another definition. Till you run your through to Section Z, that would be 26 definitions, right? Section 1GGG of the Securities Act talks about the definition of a security. They take to get to GGG before they even start talking about what a security is. Unbelievable.
Wow.
Unbelievable. We're going to have to leave this to another time. This is quite complicated and quite dense and quite legalese. So I don't want to go sprinting through 5 really densely summarized memo pages. Let's get on to some questions, Wayne.
We got a bunch from earlier. I'm just going to scroll all the way back and see.
Always response there? No investor?
You know what? I'm actually going to bring this up because we haven't talked about this in a while. If you go to StreamYard.com/Facebook, if you're wondering why, something like this happens where you're like, oh, that's not me. If you go to StreamYard.com/Facebook, it will you can authorize having your name and picture being shown. So that way, at least we know who we're talking to.
All right.
Now, mystery user asked, is Queen's Bench Court best way to find a joint venture has interacted with the legal system?
That's a darn good question, and it's a piece of diligence that you can do that is not often done. So yes, if you're thinking of starting with someone and you want to know whether they've had any interaction with the court, you can do a courthouse search. You can talk to your lawyer. Usually you have to do it through a lawyer. You could go down to the courthouse yourself. You could say, listen, I think I'm going to get into business with John Smith, and I need to know, well, let's not use John Smith. You put in the name of the person, and if it's John Smith, try and get a couple of middle names and a date of birth. And you can ask the court whether or not there have been any court actions by or against this person. And so you can get that information. And once you see that there has been an action by or against you, then can get the underlying documents to see what the action was all about. So that's the answer to that. And it looks like we got an answer here on crowdfunding.
Oh, we do.
We read at the end.
At the end, it says no investor is permitted to invest more than $2,500 in a single investment or $10,000 in total investments in a calendar year. An issuer is not permitted to raise more than $1.5 million in any 12-month period under the crowdfunding exemption. So it's it's pretty limited. It doesn't look like, unless we're somewhere we don't know about, that it'd be difficult to use crowdfunding for what we're thinking of. Too many people, too complicated, not enough money that any one person can put in. That's without knowing very much about it, folks, that's my immediate take on it. All right, Wayne, let's try and head for a few more questions.
I'd love to give credit to the person who posted that, but they haven't shared their name.
That was Corey. Corey Vance.
Donna said Corey Vance.
Nice. Thank you, Corey.
Vance. Thanks, Corey.
Melanie asked, is the regulator for the province... this is a little while back. So
Regulations.
When we were talking about how it's different for
Yeah.
each province, is that based on the province that the property is in, or is that where the investors are?
Darn good question.
Principal, I believe.
Darn good question. I think
It's the principal.
it's where the principal resides. I think it's where you are. I think you have to.
Because it's not specific to properties, right?
Yeah,
It's
it's not
specific to,
I think it's specific to the province, showing my
principal, yeah.
dismal lack of knowledge about Securities Act things, folks. I'm a real estate lawyer, not a securities lawyer. But if you're in Alberta and the property's in Alberta and you're looking to interest people in Alberta, then I think you're going to have to satisfy the Alberta Securities Regulator. Now,
Sounds like a task, Barry, for one of the 5 articling students.
Minions?
yes.
Gonna post,
we're
watch
marking down these
this
questions.
space, as the expression goes. Or you can make it a teaser for we're going to give the answer out in the creative intro course.
Oh, there you go.
Wow.
Sorry.
And for those who weren't here earlier, what's the date on that one? I think it's July 17th, right?
July 17th. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the link.
What is the easiest way to start doing joint venture deals?
What a good question.
Wow. Yep.
I'm sure that'll be answered at that event.
Stop. We have to answer some questions.
That's
But
pretty.
that's it.
It's a
Well,
big question.
the easiest way to start doing.
I'll take a stab at that.
Okay, go ahead, Neil.
I think it starts with understanding, because if you're the person who's out seeking to establish a joint venture, you have to have a level of knowledge and comfort in being able to explain to a prospective joint venture person what exactly it is, how it works, how your particular one would be set up. So I think it starts with knowledge, and then from there, the second biggest step is conversations. And it's about, again, we talk about in that some of the creative courses that you do about elevator pitch and stuff like that. So what do you do? And if you have that, you don't want to be at no insult to the people who maybe are successful in the world, where 98% of your conversations relate to selling something. It has to be woven into a conversation so that it becomes part of the fabric, not the whole canvas itself, so to speak.
Ooh,
Yes. Folks,
that was crisp.
it's great, isn't it? It's
He
great.
just has this way of just
I know.
What?
You know what we should do is we should organize a line of Neil Taniguchi bobblehead dolls with respect to creative real estate investing. And you can just set him on your shelf. He's voice activated. And you can ask
you just give a string.
How much do we have to pay people to take them away, though, Barry?
All right, I hope, Facebook user, that answers your question.
Yeah.
Does this apply if your joint venture is set up as shareholders of a corporation?
This is rewinding back to when we were talking about filling out that form.
Right. I think Securities Act stuff will apply often when you're investing in a corporation, because you had to probably approach somebody about doing a joint venture and then have a chat about how you would set up your joint venture. And if the discussions were around, why don't we do it, in a corporation? I'm pretty sure you get caught by the umbrella of Securities Act regulation, whether you invest on an individual basis or through a corporation. It's really more about how you attract people and what it is that you are, what the opportunity is that you're presenting to them. And that's a whole part of my 5-page memo, is how the courts look at determining whether something is a security or some other non-regulated thing. So that's a good question, but I think that's the answer to it for the moment, at least. Ilona, what exactly can and can't you say when talking about joint venture opportunities? You know what, Alona, I've got to defer that to the 5-page memo, because those are exactly the things that we're gonna talk about. What keeps you on side and what puts you offside in discussing joint ventures and in bringing people into your joint venture orbit. So that's and it's quite it's a case laden journey that we're going to go on through U.S. and Canadian legal cases, jurisprudence, as they say. And there's lots. It's developed over years and years and years, and various courts in the U.S. and Canada have built on each other's decisions, and they're quite specific about how the rules and the practicalities fit together. So Donna will be scheduling another one of these Monday main events to talk more about the legalities of. And
I think if you want a short form version of it, it typically, if you want to dip a toe in the water and then it goes out from there, would be when you start trumpeting that you have guarantees and risk-free and stuff that only exists like in GICs type of thing. So for what the purpose we're talking about, you can't use that kind of verbiage. Would probably be the major focus of a lot of that wording, but you're right. It's an hour to talk about every little nuance that's in there.
Yeah, certainly you can't be guaranteeing, you can't say risk-free, and there's a whole bunch of other things that you can't say. Well, let's see if we can find a couple of other questions here before we sign off. What do we got, Wayne? Anything else?
There we go. Tamara,
how do you decide how percentages are split up? How do you decide who does what within the JV? Well, that's called negotiation, Tamara. That's called negotiation. And we often talk about joint ventures and the classic 50-50 joint venture where the investor and the equity partner split the joint venture 50-50. But that's just a very rough guideline. And there can be all different kinds of ways to split up the joint venture pie. Wayne, Neil, do either of you guys have a comment on this question?
I have a memory. Go ahead, Wayne.
No, I was just going to agree with Barry that there is a standard of 50-50 that most courses, educators start with, but it really depends what kind of relationship you have. I know early on I took some lesser percentages just to get my first deal. I've heard lots of people doing that as well. Maybe you do a 60-40 where you take 40 in the beginning. Maybe in your first couple, you offer to do the property management, to save a little bit so they can get some increased cash flow. As Barry said, everything's negotiable. But as you start to build up your credibility, you get to a point where you can stand up a little taller and demand or you can, I guess not demand is the right word, but you can dictate what it is that you offer and what that value is. But early on, it's a little difficult until you get that credibility.
When you do have a bit more experience and you can stand taller, as Wayne says, if Wayne was moving from keeping 40% and giving 60% to his money partner, and now he wants to have 60% and give only 40% to his money partner, that is often a matter of presentation. Once you know how to say that the 40% the investor is getting is based on your joint venture experience, likely to be a 13.5% cash on cash return on the investment, and the guy's been looking at his up and down mutual fund or stock statements, anybody can understand 13.5% return. And the fact that comes from a 40% chunk of the investment, that's just fine. So the percentages are just, and all aspects of joint ventures are negotiated. Who does what? How much involvement each party has or wants to have or doesn't want to have. What about initial investments and then further funds are required at a later date? Is that still sharesies or is one person taking it on? Every aspect is up for negotiation, and you find your own path through the joint venture thickets as you dip your toe in the water and as you get better at it. Well,
it's so, come on, give them some credit for that expression. Come on.
What's that?
He said thickets and like, come on, it's not just me.
Go in the water.
Listen how he's. The song going this way. How this man is spinning.
My
Yeah,
goodness.
great.
Living, does that apply the same way to several partners from different provinces?
Yeah.
Okay, so Harry decided that wanted to complicate this previous question just a little bit more. Okay, so is it where the financial partner / investor is living? Does that apply the same way if you have several money partners from different provinces? I think that, as you mentioned, I think it has to do with the principal, who's the one who is who has the deal, who is looking for partners. Is that what you meant?
It's probably what Harry meant. I think Laurie May
No,
might have talked
Laurie
about
May
this.
said that it's where the money is coming from. That's the provincial.
Where the money is coming from.
Where Laurie
Interesting.
May says where the money is coming from.
Wow, that's
So then if your joint venture partner's in BC, but you're in Alberta and the money and the property's in Alberta, it's going to be regulated by BC because that's where your money partner is, says Laurie May. And folks,
Deeper dive.
deeper dive. We've got to do a deeper dive. We'll mark that down as something to be confirmed next time. Jared also remarked, and this might be close to our finishing remark, that Securities Commission's people like to creep around Facebook pages and the web to see who's offering what. And then that's how they initiate some of their enforcement actions. I do know that the BC Securities Commission has been in the past very active on creeping around the net to see what they can find. I'm not sure about the Alberta Commission, and I expect policies change from time to time, but don't think that they're not out looking for you, because they are. Not for you particularly, but looking for opportunities to prosecute we poor sods that are joint venturers.
It's not a bad thing, though, is it? I mean, what they're doing is they're protecting the public from people to getting taken advantage of.
Yes.
There's rules, right? And if we follow the rules, then we have nothing to be worried about. But if we're venturing around in that gray area, then yeah, that's why they're there, is to protect the public from being taken advantage of. Yeah,
and really, the more people they police who are going, guaranteed, you can't lose, invest with me. The more people that they find like that, and gently or otherwise convince them not to be doing that, the public's protected, and it's better for all of us who run legitimate joint venture businesses and who are looking to follow the rules and do right by our investors, for sure.
Last question.
Sahil, does the JV legal agreement stay the same if one of the partners doesn't reside in Canada? Well, I think
Short answer, no.
The answer is no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tax implications, legal implications. You probably want to have something in there that says, in the event of a disconnect or a dispute, we will only acknowledge this particular jurisdiction of a court. So they can't sue you in the Court of California for a joint venture established, in your case, Sahil, in Saskatchewan.
Yeah. So if you're doing a joint venture for anybody outside your province, you have to pay attention to rules. And if it's outside the country, there's lots more rules to think about. And so, yes, your joint venture agreements have to be crafted up specifically for your country of residence situation. And folks, that's it for tonight. We feel like we barely scratched the surface of
as usual
joint ventures and security. Man. But we do have other times that we can do this. We do have a whole bunch of things to talk about on exactly how securities commissions look at what you're doing, what you can say or can't say, what you can promise or not promise. We may get one of the securities lawyers on from Field Law to talk about the various exemptions, to talk about timing, to talk about effectiveness of the exemptions. How much does it cost? Who else has to be involved? Maybe what kind of dollar figures you think you're going to generate in your joint venture business in order to see if you can justify the cost of going through the hoops to satisfy Securities Commission. So I will explore with our securities lawyers what they think they might have to add to that conversation, and we may bring them on the next time and have them chat to us. There's other folks we can talk about too. You know, somebody like Thomas Byer, who's done the limited partnership, general partnership route. There's lots to talk about. So on that note, Wayne, Neil, thank you very much for showing up and participating, as you always do, and you're valued members of the squad here. So I do appreciate it. Donna, do you appreciate them?
Yeah.
Donna appreciates you guys too. Just so
Thank you, producer Donna.
Thanks for having us on.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.
See you next time.
Good night. Take care.